What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? I'm the Godless engineer, and I critically analyze apologist claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Today, we're taking a look at a clip from The Line. If you would like to, please go down below to the description and find a link to The Line and to the live stream that this video clip is coming from. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to The Line. I host over on The Line at least twice a month, so I hope to see you over there. All right. Let's get on into the clip. If you're ready to fuck around and find out what this crazy ass caller's talking about today, then please stay tuned. What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? I'm the Godless engineer, and tonight on Hostility, not Hostility. This isn't a hostile show. Hostility, we have a new guest, Jasper Hoffman. Jasper was part of the Peacock documentary Sins of the Amish, which anytime a documentary like that comes out, we immediately put it on our list and watch it. So, like, just knowing like that you were there. Did we watch it because we met Jasper? No, we had watched it before we actually got to meet you. So that was really awesome. But anyways, that aired in 2022. Jasper grew up as a Mennonite, but managed to escape and is now an activist and advocate for Amish and Mennonite women. Like I said, I met Jasper at Free Flow earlier this year and saw her again at NanoCon, which I did miss your speech, but I can't wait for them to put that out like on video, because I know that you said that you presented some different information there. So I can't wait to see that. But she spoke about her experiences and the work that she does now, and I'm so happy to have you here tonight there, Jasper. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah. Do you want to start off by kind of telling us, I guess, who you are, what you do? I know I kind of gave you everybody a rundown, but I mean, I figured you'd probably be able to tell people better than I can.
A little bit about myself. Yes. So yes, you're right. I did grow up conservative Mennonite, but actually my family joined in whenever I was 9. So I grew up relatively normal, like I will say, whatever that is. And then there was a very large homeschool movement and fundamentalist tradwife movement in the early 90s in Northern California, where I grew up. And so my family was actually a part of that and responsible for bringing Mennonites to California. So I kind of have this very 7-layer dip experience of life where I've lived many lives even before I was a teenager. And then, yes, I left whenever I was 18 and went about trying to create an identity. I think that was a huge part of my 20s and even my 30s was just creating that. And then through that, I think becoming comfortable talking about my experiences and recognizing that what had happened to me was substantial trauma and it wasn't just run-of-the-mill normal. And so I started the very first podcast talking about our stories of leaving our version of high control, high demand religion in 2018, called the Plain People's Podcast. And I really had no idea what I was doing. And it just blew up so quickly, which is great. And also it was a lot. It's been such a learning curve of just work over the last, 7 years, I would say. And it's taken me to so many different places. Like I was the very first former Mennonite to ever speak at the Capitol about the abuse issues that were happening and are happening within the communities. I recently started a Substack called the Plain People's Project. And that is, I've currently spent the last year and a half in Ohio recording stories of current Amish women and their experiences and barriers that they are facing and what they want the world to know. And so that's really been my new endeavor, is just really creating a space so that they can be heard, and then also going into depth of the nuances and the context of like what women and survivors are up against while still in the communities. So that's like a very little gist about me.
Yeah. No, and if anybody has a chance to listen to Jasper talk, she has a fabulous talk that she gives. She gave one at Free Flow, like I said, and at NanoCon. But it's just so interesting to hear about these communities and the issues that are plaguing women in those communities. I do want to remind everybody that this is still a call-in show tonight. So if you want to ask Jasper any kind of questions tonight, feel free. The call-in number is 720-619-2288, or you can use the link in the description to call in over the web. So we do want to talk to everybody tonight that wants to talk to Jasper. Even if you're a theist and you have questions, about really anything, feel free to call in. We'd really love to talk to you. So I want to start off as far as the sort of this little pre-show or this beginning of the show interview here. I'm wondering, first thing that always comes to my mind is like, what are the differences between all these denominations? And it sounds like you primarily work with like the Mennonites and the Amish, but I know that some of the stats that you bring also include Anabaptists. And I'm just wondering if you can kind of distinguish all those communities between each other.
Yeah. So great question. So technically the religion that is the umbrella religion is Anabaptism. So that Amish, Mennonite, Hutterite brethren will fall under that. And their main practice when they pulled away and they were rebels in the Great Reformation were that they believed that infants should not be baptized. They believed that's why they're called Anabaptist. And so there is a common misconception that the Amish came first, but in fact, the Mennonites actually started the Anabaptist movement, and then the Amish split away from the Mennonites. So I think like what I have discovered in high control, high demand religions is, especially in the Anabaptist churches, is that there are major church splits continually. So you'll have so many different types of Amish, so many different types of Mennonites. And I often get accused for giving the Mennonites a bad name because many people are more liberal Mennonites that have split from the Lancaster Conference, which was in the 50s and 60s. So when I use the Mennonite term and my work, it's all within the conservative churches. So these are not your neighbors that the women are wearing jeans or going to college, or the Mennonite schools, or that they have musical instruments. Everything that I'm doing is in a lot of the really conservative, insular communities that people don't have access to. So it can confuse people because there's actually Amish Mennonites, there's Old Order Mennonites that drive horse and buggy. There's just a lot of differences between the two. And so it can be really confusing whenever we get into the gist of it. But so in general, I like to tell people I work with a lot of the more conservative churches, and that's just more of an umbrella term for some of the Anabaptist ones.
Yeah, and when you say that you work with these churches, if I remember from your talk that you give, I mean, you know how to walk and talk, as part of that community. So you actually kind of infiltrate, you kind of get into that community and talk with people in confidence that way, right?
Absolutely. I think I am the only person that's doing what I'm doing at the capacity and level that it's gotten to. And that really comes from my ability to have one foot in this world and one foot in the other world. And that's actually something that I really struggled with whenever I left the community and whenever I was in the community, because I've never really felt like I've belonged because my family joined in. So I was never fully accepted in the church. And still, that's something that people will try to come at me and say, well, you weren't born Mennonite, so you're technically not a Mennonite. And I always say it's actually way more difficult for those of us that join in, because you have to prove yourself so much more. And not only prove yourself just to get into the community, but also to stay in good standing. And so that, though, has given me this gift where I am well received in the communities because I know the language. And that's not the vernacular. That's all of the hidden meanings. That's all how the control. I can read something and know exactly what the underlying meaning is. And then I can interpret it in a way that is understandable and digestible for those that are not within the community or didn't grow up playing to be able to understand. And so it's given me this really great ability to be able to break down the different barriers and be able to convey them to law enforcement and to the judicial system and to people that are listening on the call, and help you kind of understand what the meaning is, even though there's really not a word for it. And then also gain trust and rapport with the women that I help too, because they know that I get it. That's oftentimes the first thing they say. They have this huge relief over their face because they don't have to try to explain what they're living through. I lived through it. So there's automatic trust there.
Yeah, one of the I guess sort of facts that you have presented to people coming from this Byler Mitchell paper is that in Amish, Mennonite, and Anabaptist communities, child sexual abuse is never discussed, and there are no words to describe what is happening to them. And I guess that's really they have no concept of like sexual abuse and all that. I mean, that's what you mean by like being able to interpret, what they're talking about, whenever they're interviewing potential victims, right?
So I love that you mentioned this, because this research paper that you're referencing was done by Mary Byler and Professor Tara Mitchell, and then I co-authored on this. And this is a really important research study because up until this point, there's been no documentation that we can actually reference when giving statistics to people about the sex. We're just talking about sex abuse crimes in this particular research study. And what I go into is all of the different levels of crimes. But for right now, let's talk about sex abuse, child sex abuse. There was no reference point, right? So people would throw things out there. And then also, oftentimes skeptics will say, well, it's bad in every community. It's bad here, it's bad there. And then when you're in the church, you're told always that things are so much worse out in the world. And that is one of the ways that they contain you and keep you in the church. And so by working on this, which took us 2 years to be able to do, we now actually can present statistics that show that almost 1 in 2 of those that took the survey have had child sexual abuse. Of that number, though, if you look at the research in its capacity, 13% said that they were unsure if they were abused, which is really important because we can't really include that, obviously, in the research, the numbers. But if you take that into account, there's a reason being is because things are never called what they truly are when you're in the church. Oftentimes, abuse is called moral failing, sin. You fell into sin. You were led astray. And they don't have this spectrum of to them, lying is the same as raping your cow or your sibling or your infant. There's really not a weight placed on one thing or the other. And so when you're told that somebody falls into sin, you just don't question that really because you don't know what that really is. And so those that have left the church or are still in the church, there's oftentimes they have never been validated in knowing what crime has actually been committed against them because they don't know what to call it.
Yeah. You speaking about, all of this has made me think about, do you think that these problems are rooted in their theology and culture in general? Or where do you think the problem really lies in that?
Well, my opinion has changed over the years as I've done more and more work within the church. And it's interesting how that shaped me. So where I'm at now and what my opinion is that I believe it is twofold. I think that they are so consumed with being self-contained, but they don't have the answers they don't know how to get ahead of it, right? They don't know how to treat the problem. And so their solution is to create more and more barriers that prevent outside from coming in to help clean the house. Essentially, it's like you have this beautiful house, right? And it looks so lovely on the outside, but nobody's opened the windows and there's been an infection in. And so it's just spreading everywhere. And so but everybody's driving by on the outside and they're just saying, oh, it looks so beautiful. So nobody's stopping to check on the participants that are locked inside and they're dying, right, from the toxicity. And nobody knows how to open the windows because the people that are in the house are scared to ask the people from the outside how to open the windows. And so all they do is they create even more barriers. They're putting more and more plastic on the windows, thinking that the toxicity is coming from the outside when in fact it's inside. And so using that analogy, I truly believe that their theology, it's gotten so past that. And it is about, they don't know how to clean up the mess. And they believe that they are above the law. They believe that the outside looks towards them. So a lot of it is branding and imagery that is keeping them from seeking outside help. And it's perpetuating the issue. So does that stem from the theology? Sure, right? Where the headship order comes into play. So you have the ministry, you have the bishops, you have the ministry, you have the head of the household, the father or the husband, then you have the wife, then you have the children, then you have the single women. And so that does come into play when you look at how to report abuse, because you have to follow this headship order. You can't go out of that headship order and just call the police. So there is that theology aspect of it. And then you also have the branding and imagery issue from the outside where everything looks good. And so they just try to keep it self-contained.
Okay. And I know we've been talking about the child sexual abuse and sexual abuse in general in that community, but I'm wondering, what are the main challenges for Amish and Mennonite communities, women in the Amish and Mennonite communities?
Yeah, great question. I love talking about this. What are the barriers that current Amish women are facing? And this is what I dove into in my Substack. So when I first went up to record in 2023, I had no idea. And my way of approaching everything is I have a platform, right? I have the Plain People's podcast, and I can utilize that to amplify voices, and maybe somebody will listen and be able to help. So I really try to facilitate that. And so whenever these women had reached out to me for help, I said, hey, this is how I can help. I can record stories. If you're comfortable doing that, we can keep you anonymous. And so I went up for 3 days, and I had Amish women that were coming over, and we were just recording and talking. And in the process of that, I started recognizing and realizing, oh, there's a lot of barriers here. This is not just sex abuse, and this is not just the ministry. This is multi-level. And so it took me about 1.5 years to figure out all of the barriers. And so you have the steering committee, you have the 7 elders, you have the restoration team, you have a new rollout that I just found out about this week that is coming into play, which is called the Hope Committee, which is now an additional barrier to protect the restoration team. You have the bishops, you have the ministry, you have the facilities where they will send women and children away to keep them silent. And in those, you then have money laundering, sex trafficking, labor trafficking, you have medical malpractice, you have, massive cover-ups of crimes that are occurring. It's organized crime is really what it is. So it's just many spokes on the wheel that are perpetuating it and keeping it going forward.
Okay. And before we get to the callers, I'm just asking kind of a final question here. Considering all of these challenges that these women face and everything, what drove you to leave the community, and then how actually did you get out?
Oh, it's such a long story, John. So I'll make it really brief. Okay. I'll give you the Cliff Note version because I really haven't really talked about my full story. I did not want to leave. So I was really immersed in it and had bought it hook, line, and sinker. I had to in order to survive. And that's what really killed me. But I recognized that there was no way that I was going to be able to stay in and have the life that I wanted, and to be able to get married to the person that I wanted to. And because of that, there was just really no way that I could make it. So I had to make a decision. If I stayed, what kind of life would I have? And it looked really bleak. And so I was really squeezed out, but very, very unwillingly. And it was very painful. And it took me about 2 years of, I was still dressing really conservative and still wearing a head covering. So I wasn't somebody that left and was just like, hell yeah, give me a beer, and cut my hair. It just took a lot for me to kind of embrace it. And it was different for me too, because my family had come from the outside world. So aside from my immediate parents and my brothers, the rest of my family was worldly. So I had access to a lot of things that, and people that most people that leave don't have. So I was in a very privileged position, and I still struggled dearly, but I was able to stay in my parents' house, and it was really awful for a very long time because my dad was still a member, and the amount of pressure that they put on a man to keep your family in line is just unreal. But so it was just a really horrific, painful experience, which is why I wanted to start talking about it, so people could understand. Because I think it's easy to look at someone, 20 years down the line and say, wow, you've built this great life. And I'm like, yeah, but you have no idea what it was like to leave this stuff. And nobody was talking about it. It's really hard. It is. So.
Yeah, I can't imagine how hard that would be to leave. I mean, I was in a very privileged position in that religion wasn't a major factor in my life growing up. But I'm kind of curious. A lot of non-religious people report that they have a lot of anxiety about certain theological concepts, like the fear of hell and theological concepts like that. Do you still struggle with any of that, like today, or are you kind of at a point where you've moved past that, like you've dealt with that emotionally and stuff?
I'm free of that, and it is amazing. It has been a lot of work, but I am in such a good spot, which has allowed me to be able to go back in. I mean, the fact that I can go back into these communities and it doesn't trigger me anymore is just a huge testimony to how much work that I have done within my own self, and have so much self-awareness and autonomy and know myself really, really well. And that's just come from decades of it. So no, but I will tell you, the first, 15 years, I mean, I was almost institutionalized because I had a mental breakdown over wearing white socks, which sounds ridiculous. It really does. But when you believe that you are going to hell for wearing white socks and just lose it, because it is like, it sounds so ridiculous, but at that time, that was it. I was doomed. Hook, line, and sinker, and so it's just been a slow detox and deconstruction of all of that. And now I don't even like wearing socks. Yeah. So, just ankles everywhere.
No, yeah, totally. Fuck socks. But I just have to say, I'm glad that you've been able to work through it. And I think a lot of people, out there think that deconstructing from such a high control situation like that can be like quick, or not just the high control maybe is quick, but just deconstructing from religion in general is like quick and dealing with anything that might be lingering. So like, it definitely takes a lot of, time and effort and work in order to move past those things.
Yeah. And for me, like, I recognized a few years ago that I have so much gratitude for my life that I have built, because I have single-handedly constructed intentionally every single moment of my day. From the moment I wake up, everything is in direct rebellion to how I was raised and what I believed. I am a single woman waking up by herself. I have bleached my hair. I can turn on music. I'm going to work. I can drive whatever I want to drive. I have my own bank account. I don't have to check in. I don't have anybody that is responsible for me. Like, every single second that I live has been created by me. And so I have so much gratitude, and I'm always so thankful and so retrospective in the fact that how much you can change as a person. And it's such a gift when you realize that you're free to be able to create. There's free will, which is, obviously not taught in high control, high demand religion. And it's the tits, y'all. It's so great.
All right. So we do have a couple of theist callers and a couple of atheist callers to get to tonight already in the queue, but there are still lines open if people want to call in. Just as a reminder, the number is 720-619-2288 if you'd like to call in and interact with either Jasper on what she's, her activism and what she's doing, or just in general with, a couple of non-religious people. We'd really love to hear from you. Also, I don't know, Arden, sorry about this, but do we, on hostility, do we read the chats at the end, like $5 or more?
Yep. We're going to take $5 super chats.
Okay, awesome. $5 or more if you don't want to call in, or you just got some kind of side question that you want answered. Feel free to send in a super chat, and we will directly interact with it. We would love to hear any kind of questions that you might have for Jasper about the Amish and Mennonite and just Anabaptist in general, I guess. If you want to ask a question like that, please feel free to send in a super chat, and we will definitely answer that later. Oh, yes. Thank you, honey. Also, Jasper, where can we find you? I believe all of your links are down in the description, but why don't you remind everybody where they can find you at?
They are, but you can also find me at theplainpeoplespodcast.com, as well as the Plain People's Podcast. That's on every single streaming device you could imagine. I have not put out new content in a few years, as I've been focusing more on doing the Plain People's Project, which is on Substack. That's been my pride and joy lately. You can find me on Peacock as well as Apple TV under Sins of the Amish. It's a 2-part documentary, which we came out, I think, 3 years ago. It's all a blur. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's really, those are kind of my avenues of communication. And then Instagram, I keep people updated more on my Instagram than anything else. And that's just under my name, Jasper C. Hoffman. I'll keep you updated on what's going on as things unfold in real time with the church. And I swear every time I say, there's nothing new is going to come out. And then it's like every day, there's just always something. So yeah.
Well, heathens, that's going to be it for today's clip from the line. Again, if you would like to subscribe to the line, their links are in the description. So please go down there and subscribe. And as a reminder, I do host over there at least twice a month on either a Sunday or a Monday. So if you want to see more of me answering questions from callers, please go over to the line and subscribe. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.